Rajesh Kumar, a charming Indian salesman living in Dubai, and Aisha Rahman, a devoted nurse searching for love, seemed destined for a new beginning. But when lies about marriage and divorce unraveled, their passion spiraled into a deadly betrayal that shocked an entire community. Rajesh Kumar's life in Dubai looked ordinary to those around him, but beneath the surface, he was a man balancing lies with precision. He had come from a small town in India, chasing the dream of success in the Gulf, and over the years he had built a stable career as a sales executive in a luxury car showroom. His job required charm and persuasion, and those same qualities made him popular outside work too. To his customers and colleagues, Rajesh was a friendly and reliable man who always dressed sharp and spoke with confidence. But to those who knew him in India, he was a devoted husband and father of 2 young children, a man with responsibilities waiting back home. He kept that part of his life carefully locked away, never letting it interfere with the new identity he was building in Dubai. Living in a rented apartment in Dubai, Rajesh made sure to present himself as a single man who had endured the pain of a broken marriage. To strangers and acquaintances in the city, he told a rehearsed story of how his wife had left him years ago, taking the children and forcing him to start life over again. He knew exactly how to shape his words to win sympathy and admiration. This fictional version of himself was a bachelor with freedom, someone who appeared vulnerable yet determined to rebuild his life. It was a perfect mask for the double existence he maintained. The nightlife of Dubai became the stage where Rajesh played his role most convincingly. He mingled at gatherings of expatriates, attended weekend outings with friends, and visited coffee shops where he was always quick to strike up conversations. It was during one of these encounters that he met Aisha Rahman, a young nurse from Kerala who had been living in the city for several years. She was hardworking, quiet, and carried the burden of supporting her family back home. Her loneliness in a foreign land made her long for companionship, and Rajesh stepped into her life at just the right moment. With his practiced charm and promises of stability, Rajesh quickly gained her trust. He spoke of wanting to start fresh, of dreams of remarrying, and of building a home in Dubai with someone who would understand him. Aisha, who had been waiting for someone to share her life with, saw in him a partner who could offer love and security. She believed him completely, never suspecting that every word was part of a carefully crafted lie. What began as a chance meeting soon grew into a relationship that seemed genuine, but beneath it lay the dangerous seeds of deception that would eventually lead to tragedy. For the first year of their relationship, Aisha felt as though she had finally found her place in the world. Rajesh treated her with affection, and she saw his attention as proof of his commitment. He showered her with small but meaningful gestures, surprise visits at the hospital where she worked, thoughtful gifts on her birthday, and words of encouragement whenever she felt tired from her demanding shifts. He always told her that he admired her independence and her dedication to supporting her family back home. These compliments warmed her heart and gave her the confidence that their bond was special. To Aisha, Rajesh was not just a partner but a future husband, someone who would stand by her side when she built her own family in Dubai. Their weekends became filled with moments that Aisha cherished. Rajesh would take her to restaurants overlooking the marina, long drives to Sharjah, or small getaways to Fujairah where they could escape the noise of the city. He painted a picture of the future with vivid details, speaking of a modest apartment they would buy together, and how he wanted to save enough money for their wedding. His words always carried a sense of urgency, as if happiness was just around the corner, only delayed by the final paperwork of his divorce. Aisha never doubted him, believing that his patience and persistence were proof of his sincerity. She began making sacrifices to support this shared dream. Out of her modest salary, she started setting aside money, sometimes even lending it to Rajesh when he said he needed extra funds for legal fees, connected to his divorce settlement in India. Each time she handed him her savings, he promised to return it soon, assuring her that everything was for their shared future. Aisha's friends noticed her growing attachment, and often teased her about wedding plans. She introduced Rajesh proudly as her fiancé, certain that he would soon make it official. Rajesh, however, lived with constant calculation. He carefully avoided introducing her to his co-workers, worried that someone might slip the truth about his wife and children in India. When Aisha asked about his family, he brushed it off with rehearsed explanations about how the past was behind him. His confidence and consistency made the lie believable. As the months passed, the illusion of love grew stronger, binding Aisha closer to him, while Rajesh balanced his two lives like a skilled performer, unaware that his web of deception was slowly tightening into a trap that would one day be impossible to escape. The first cracks in Rajesh's carefully built story appeared in the most unexpected way. One evening, as Aisha scrolled through social media, she stumbled upon a photograph that froze her in place. It was a cheerful family picture, recently posted by one of Rajesh's relatives in India. There he was, dressed in a crisp shirt, standing beside a smiling woman who was unmistakably his wife. Two children stood in front of them, both resembling him so closely that there was no room for doubt. The caption underneath read, "Happy anniversary to my dear brother and his lovely wife." Aisha's heart sank. The man she believed was divorced, the man who had promised her a future, was still married and celebrating it openly. Her first reaction was disbelief. She convinced herself that maybe the photo was old or perhaps a misunderstanding, but the timestamp showed the post was recent, only a few weeks old. She stared at the smiling faces of the children, realizing for the first time that she had been part of a life built on lies. Anger surged through her, but beneath it lay a deep wound of humiliation. She thought about all the sacrifices she had made, the money she had given him, and the future she had imagined. Everything seemed to collapse in a single moment. Unable to control her emotions, Aisha confronted Rajesh over messages and calls. She demanded an explanation, but his answers were slippery and dismissive. He insisted the photo was old, and repeated the same story that his divorce was nearly complete, just awaiting final signatures in India. Each excuse felt like another stab at her dignity. She had trusted him blindly, and now he was trying to cover up with more lies. Her frustration grew into obsession. Determined to uncover the full truth, Aisha began digging deeper. She checked his contacts, searched for details through mutual acquaintances, and pieced together fragments of information. The more she found, the worse it became. Rajesh's wife was very much present in his life, living with his parents in India and raising their children while he worked abroad. The money he claimed to need for divorce proceedings was likely being sent to support them. Every revelation cut deeper than the last. Aisha realized that not only had she been deceived, but she had been used. The future she thought she was building with Rajesh was nothing but a mirage. What began as heartbreak slowly transformed into simmering rage, setting her on a dangerous path where love was no longer in control. Only betrayal and anger remained. The night everything unraveled was heavy with tension that neither Rajesh nor Aisha could escape. After days of silence and unanswered questions, Aisha asked him to come over to her apartment in Al Noda. To him, it seemed like an attempt at reconciliation, but to her, it was a confrontation she had been planning with mounting fury. She had gathered all the proof she could, the social media screenshots, copies of recent family photos, and even bank statements that hinted at where his money was really going. For Aisha, this meeting was not about reconciliation. It was about forcing him to face the truth he had denied for far too long. When Rajesh walked through her door, he was met with an intensity he hadn't seen before. Aisha laid out the evidence in front of him, her hands trembling with both rage and despair. The lies he had carefully repeated for years no longer carried weight. She demanded honesty, but Rajesh's instinct was to deflect, to soothe with the same excuses he had always used. He spoke of complications, delays, and legal processes in India. His calm demeanor, once so reassuring, only fueled her anger now. To her, it felt like mockery, as if he believed she would still believe his stories even when the truth was undeniable. The argument escalated quickly. voices echoing through the walls of the small apartment. Neighbors later recalled hearing the sound of shouting, though the words were muffled. Inside, the emotions were volatile. Aisha's heartbreak had crossed the line into uncontrollable rage. Months of humiliation, sacrifice, and shattered trust erupted in that moment. As Rajesh tried to walk away from the argument, dismissing her fury as temporary, Aisha felt something snap within her. She reached for a metal rod she kept by her bed for protection, a simple precaution she had once considered necessary for living alone. In her state of anger, it became a weapon. She swung with force, striking Rajesh across the shoulder, and then again as he stumbled. Panic flashed across his face, but her fury was too far gone. Blow after blow landed, each one fueled by betrayal and pain, until Rajesh collapsed onto the floor. The room fell into a chilling silence, broken only by her heavy breathing. When she realized what she had done, shock set in. Blood pooled on the floor, his body motionless. Aisha dropped the rod, her hands shaking uncontrollably. In one devastating outburst, love had transformed into violence, and the man she once planned to marry now lay lifeless before her. In the aftermath of the violent outburst, Aisha stood frozen in her apartment, staring at Rajesh's lifeless body. Panic surged through her as the weight of what had just happened settled in. Her mind raced for solutions: clean the blood, hide the evidence, find a way to make it look like an accident. But every thought collided with reality. The bloodstains were too large to erase, and Rajesh's body too heavy to move without drawing attention. Minutes felt like hours as she frantically wiped surfaces, her hands trembling, leaving behind smudges that would only reveal her guilt later. She tried to wash the rod in her bathroom sink, but the metallic smell of blood lingered, clinging to the air. Meanwhile, the neighbors had already sensed that something was wrong. The shouts earlier in the evening had been louder than usual, and the heavy thuds that followed had not gone unnoticed. When they realized the noise had abruptly stopped, concern grew. A call was made to the authorities, reporting a disturbance in the building. Within the hour, by police officers were knocking on Aisha's door. She hesitated, her heart pounding, but when the door finally opened, they immediately noticed the signs of struggle. Inside the apartment, the scene told its own story. Blood on the floor, the rod leaning against the wall, and Rajesh's lifeless body lying where he had fallen. Aisha's attempt at cleaning only made the crime scene more obvious. She was taken into custody on the spot, her silence and trembling figure offering no resistance. The investigation moved swiftly. Phone records revealed months of messages between the two, filled with promises from Rajesh and confrontations from Aisha once she discovered the truth. Friends of the couple came forward, sharing how Aisha had spoken proudly of her fiancé and how devastated she was when she realized his betrayal. Financial records exposed the money she had lent him under the guise of divorce proceedings. Every detail painted a picture of trust manipulated and hope destroyed. The trial that followed drew significant attention in the expatriate community. For some, Rajesh was a man who had played a dangerous game and lost. For others, Aisha was a woman whose heartbreak had driven her to unforgivable violence. The court weighed the evidence carefully, and in the end, Aisha was sentenced to life in prison. Back in India, Rajesh's wife and children mourned a husband and father who had been living a lie. In Kerala, Aisha's parents struggled with the shame of their daughter's actions. Two families, bound by tragedy, were left with only grief. What had started as a secret love affair ended as a cautionary tale of deceit, betrayal, and irreversible consequences.